All right. In the interest of being prompt, I have 11 o'clock Central Time on my clock. Good morning, everyone. Good afternoon for you folks on the East Coast. And thanks for joining us today for Biosimilars, Impact and Implications. We have record attendance for this webinar today, so it must be a hot topic. And that's why our great marketing team worked to put this together for you and bring this great, timely information to you with some of our partners. So a quick welcome here. I am Jim Wachtel. I'm Chief Revenue Officer with HealthEZ. I'll be joined today with Becky Fenrick, Chief Pharmacy Officer of AlignRx, and also Josh Schreiner, our Chief Product Officer at HealthEZ. We're going to jump in and raise the curtain on all of these biosimilar innovations that are taking the market by storm here. And we are we will be recording this webinar, so if you have to leave early, you can come back and access the recording. If you think it's so great that you want to share it with your colleagues, you'll be able to do that. And if you missed something, you can also re-listen to whatever topic was covered. If you have questions, please enter them in the chat box. We will do our best to answer them either in real time or most likely at the end during the Q&A. We want to keep this moving for you, but if we do have some great dialogue going on at the end, we will keep it going. So HealthEZ, who are we? We are a third-party administrator that has been around for 40 years. And we like to help our clients and our partners bring the most innovative health plans to our self-funded clients. We focus on three things that help us drive value for the plans that we work with. The first one is the HealthEZ experience. How do our members and our partners feel in interacting with HealthEZ and getting what they need to meet their objectives, whether it's personal objectives as a member or business objectives as an organization that views their health plan as part of their business strategy. The second thing we focus on is cost containment. That's right in the bullseye of what we'll be talking about today. We really want to work with our clients to help bring the best cost containment strategies in the marketplace early and often. And then finally, cost predictability. How do we help our plans predict the future and smooth out the sometimes variable cost of managing and owning a health plan? So with that, I'm going to turn it over to Josh Schreiner, kick it off and go a little deeper on cost containment. And again, thanks for joining us today.
Thanks, Jim, and welcome to everybody who was able to join. Today's webinar will be informative on how biosimilars can impact the pharmacy benefit marketplace, and probably most importantly, how it can impact the cost of drugs for employer-sponsored medical plans. At HealthEZ, we have a focus on bending the medical and pharmacy cost curve. Our view is that we want to give employers and consultants a wide range of options and tools to control their plan spend. Today's webinar is a great opportunity to see how biosimilars can fit into our approach. Our special guest will get into several of these indirectly, including discount methodology, how these drugs are priced versus the brand Humira, smart coverage design, how our PBMs are handling and treating these medications. So are they placing the biosimilar at parity or mandating coverage of the biosimilar in lieu of Humira, as well as access management. So for those of you that aren't as familiar, our cost containment approach is a 7-category that gives employers and consultants lots of levers and configurability to make sure that their medical and pharmacy plan are able to perform to meet their business needs and business strategies. So again, appreciate everybody joining today. And without further ado, I'm going to turn it over to Becky.
Hey, thank you. Once again, I'm Becky Fenrick, and I'm the Chief Pharmacy Officer for AlignRx. And AlignRx is a consulting firm, and we are focused in the pharmacy benefits space. So today, what I plan to cover are basically a little bit of background on what are biosimilars, why are they trending now, what does it mean for competition to Humira, and then ultimately, what does this mean for your plan sponsors? So what are biosimilars? What I'd like to do to start out with is to really contrast and compare biosimilars to traditional drugs and their generics. So think about traditional drugs and generics. Those are typically smaller molecule drugs, and the structure, the chemical structure, is more simple than you would see in a biologic. A biologic, on the other hand, would be made from a living organism or a living source, and the molecules themselves are much more complex. They're larger and they're much more complex. Let's look at how they're approved. The Hatch-Waxman, the Hatch-Waxman Act is the process that the FDA goes through to approve generic drugs. For biosimilars, that would be the Biologics Price Competition and Innovation Act. Both of them, both of the products, whether they are traditional drugs and their generics or the biologics and biosimilars, go through extensive FDA approval and testing. When we look at generic drugs and their brands have structurally identical active ingredients. And generics must show bioequivalence to the innovator drug. What that means is they have to show that they get into the body at the same rate and to the same extent as does the branded or reference products. Biosimilars are a little bit different. Their approval process, they have to show that they work the same. There are no clinically meaningful differences from the innovator drug. And then, as I'm sure most of you know, generics can be substituted. Those with an A rating can be substituted for the originator product or the brand product without the prescriber's approval at the pharmacy level, depending on the state law. Similarly, interchangeable biosimilars have a similar status in that they may be substituted without the prescriber approval. And again, this depends on individual state pharmacy laws. So we can move on to the next slide. So what's going on with biosimilars? What biosimilars are out in the market? Humira is one that I wanted to highlight because that is a very important one. We're going to focus a lot of our attention in the upcoming slides on that. But some of the other products that are out there, like Humira, and again, Humira is one of the top-selling drugs in the world, and it's used for inflammatory conditions such as rheumatoid arthritis or psoriasis or Crohn's disease. But one of the other ones that's on here is Novolog. Novolog is an insulin product. So insulins are part of the biosimilar equation as well. We also have Stelara, which is another one you may recognize, another top-selling drug, and it's probably hitting many plan sponsors' top spend. That one we expect to come to market with biosimilar competition early next year. And then another one that you probably would recognize because of extensive advertising by the manufacturer is Cosentyx. And a few years down the road, we expect to see Cosentyx have some biosimilar competition. So move on to the next slide. So why are they important now? Well, Humira, which is the top-selling drug both globally and in the US, has now got biosimilar competition. Humira sales exceeded for the lifetime of the product $200 billion. And in 2023, there's now direct competition with the biosimilars for Humira. So if we go on to the next slide. So what happened in 2023? We began the year with Humira being sole product with adalimumab as the active ingredient available in the US, and that was the only one that was available on the PBM formularies until the end of January. On January 31st, Amgen, the manufacturer, one of the manufacturers, brought to market the first biosimilar to Humira, and that product is called Amjevita. From February to June, most PBMs in the US added Amjevita to their formularies at a parity status with Humira, so it was on equal footing with Humira. And then in July, there was a substantial increase in the number of products that biosimilar products to Humira that were available in the US. 7 additional products came in July, and then 1 additional product came in November Pfizer brought their product out a little bit later. My impression is that they delayed the launch of their product until they received that interchangeability status. So the PBMs evaluated these products, and most PBMs in the second half of 2023 for the 2023 formularies added about 2 additional biosimilars to the formularies in plus the Humira, and all of them at the parity status with Humira. So let's take a look on the next slide at some of the attributes of the Humira biosimilars. Humira is available in the US in 2 different concentrations. There's a high concentration product and a low concentration product. And the difference between the two is the amount of volume or liquid that will need to be injected when the dose is delivered. The dose is the same, it's just the higher concentration product has a lower volume of liquid, and many patients that makes it more comfortable for them to use. As you can see, most of the products that came to market though are low concentration. If we consider Humira's utilization in the US, most of the utilization is in the high concentration products. So just you want to think about that when we're thinking about formularies and access, and if someone is switching over to a biosimilar, that might be a consideration. Another thing I wanted to point out is the pricing strategies of the products that came to market as biosimilars to Humira. When Amjevita came to market, the manufacturer opted for a dual pricing strategy. Some of the packaging for Amjevita was sold at a high WAC. WAC is wholesale acquisition cost, and it is the list price, also sometimes referred to as a list price for a product in the drug space. So Amjevita's high WAC packaging is priced at about a 5% discount to Humira, whereas their low WAC product, or the low WAC packaging for Amjevita, came out at about a 55% discount to the Humira. As the additional products came to market, the manufacturers made some decisions on how they were going to price their products. Some of them opted to solely have the high WAC option. Some of them decided to do a dual pricing strategy, like for example, the Sotezlo, but they did it in a little different approach than the Amjevita did, in that they have the Sotezlo branded as a branded biosimilar, and then a non-branded adalimumab ADBM would be the same product as Sotezlo. The rest of the products on here I've got marked on the slide, whether they're high WAC or low WAC. But one thing that was I want to bring to your attention is that most of the products that came out as high WAC are at about a 5% discount to Humira. Other than Amjevita, the rest of the low WAC products that came to market are priced at about an 80% discount to Humira. So there's some pretty significant differences in the pricing strategies for the biosimilars to Humira. So we move to the next slide. So what's going on in 2024 with formularies? There are a couple of interesting things I'd like to point out. As you can see, most of the PBMs that we have here, as well as this is pretty common across the PBM industry, have Humira on, and then they also have several of the biosimilars. Some of them removed Amjevita, some of them kept it on. But I want to point out CVS. CVS is taking an interesting approach, and they, for first quarter of 2024, do have Humira on the formulary. However, they are preparing for April 1st to have Humira moved from their commercial formularies. So what this means is they're working with the members or patients and their prescribers at this time to transition individuals who are using Humira over to one of the biosimilars. So move on to the next slide. So what does all this mean from a cost perspective? What does it really mean? So I just wanted to go over what you are probably hearing is PBMs will be making their decisions about formularies about net costs. But what does that mean? We start with the wholesale acquisition cost, or the AWP, which is the average wholesale price, which you start that as your reference price, and then you apply a discount to that. Most PBM contracts are written such that the guarantees are around AWP less a discount. So we start there with the AWP less a discount. And then sometimes a manufacturer offers rebates for a product. So you would want to take that rebate if there is one that's being passed along or being offered, and take that off from the cost of the product to get the net cost. So I just wanted to point out the fact that it's not as easy as just the acquisition cost or the WAC. You also have to look at the discount, the differences in discounts, as well as if there are any rebates available. So we move on to the next slide. So what does this mean for your clients? Well, the biosimilar things that I would recommend you think about is, again, look at the formularies. We talked a little bit about what the PBMs are doing with respect to their formularies. And that's going to dictate which of these biosimilar products would be available for members under your plans based on what the PBMs are allowing on their formularies. But let's also think about benefit design. What does that mean? What do you have to think about with respect to biosimilars as it relates to benefit design? Remember, biosimilars are not generics, so they're not going to default to the generic tier. So the member cost share is going to be a branded member cost share. Not all biosimilars are specialty products. So think about the biosimilars in the insulin class, for example. They would have a traditional brand cost share in a typical benefit design. But many of these products are specialty. So what does that mean? Well, the specialty tier is typically just a single tier, and sometimes it is a coinsurance. So instead of having a flat dollar copay, it would be a function of the list price of the product or the AWP of the product, because that's the way the discount is calculated. So if you have individuals or if you have plans for which the individual member is paying a coinsurance, or if they have a deductible where they're paying 100% until the deductible is met, the low WAC products might be more attractive for them from a perspective of what the member cost share is. Or contrasting that, if the high WAC products were Humira or the high WAC biosimilars were on the formulary and utilization was there, especially with the deductibles, the member actually might be hitting the deductible a little bit earlier. So these are all considerations that you want to think about when you're looking at your benefit design. We have a number of clients who are actually looking to, or they have started to incorporate within the biosimilar space, actually having a separate biosimilar tier. So I did want to put that out there, that is a benefit design innovation that is starting to get a little bit of traction for the biosimilar space. So that is the end for that slide. So I want to thank you for your time, and my contact information is here if you have questions, if you want to contact me out after this. And also, if you take a look at our website, we do have some resources. We have a white paper on Humira biosimilars and an industry insight site that's a shorter version of the highlights of what's going on in biosimilars. So, turn it back to Jen.
Well, thank you, Becky. That's a great overview of a rapidly evolving topic within our industry. So now I'm going to call on all of the plan design geeks to ask us some good questions, because I can think of about 20 right now. And I guess maybe I'll start off with one of my questions. What percentage of these biosimilars are infusions as opposed to just injections? Is it 0 or 100?
That's a great question. That varies by product. So for Humira specifically, that we spent most of our time speaking about, that's all injection. But if you think of some of the other biosimilars that are on the market, one of the products that has faced biosimilar competition is an infused product. It's called Remicade. It's also in the anti-inflammatory class, and it's used primarily for either rheumatoid arthritis or Crohn's disease. That product has is definitely an infused product, and so it's out there. Most plans pay for it on the medical benefit because of the fact that it's an infused product. So the pricing is a little bit different than what we spoke about as far as discounts and the like. But that is one example of an infused product. Some of the other products that would be out there that are biosimilars, Rituxan is one that has a biosimilar that's also infused product. There are some chemo support agents like the Epigen or Appropriate. They have biosimilars now, and they would be injections. So those are just a couple of examples.
So
Right.
taking what CVS is doing, what are your thoughts on what we can expect to see from other pharmacy benefit managers, either in 2024 or as we move into 2025, as it relates to Humira and the biosimilars being placed at parity?
I expect, or we expect, that more PBMs will be moving in that arena. Excuse me, into that space of removing Humira from the formularies, or offering formularies that would do that, maybe having multiple formulary options, excuse me, or utilization management protocols to require perhaps a low WAC product. So I do expect that with CVS's move, other PBMs will take similar tactics and strategies and move over to preferring biosimilars.
Awesome. So lots more questions. I have a few more for you, Becky, but I want to make sure that the audience has an opportunity to ask us some questions. And just to make it easy, if you're looking at the team screen, if you look at the top bar, you should have a Q&A selection choice. That's should be about the fourth one from the left. If you have a question, please type your question into the Q&A, and we'd love to answer your question once you ask it in that format, please.
Another question that I know has been top of mind is these biosimilars. Obviously, they're newer to the U.S. market, but some of these have been around for several years. Is that correct?
Yes. Several have been around in the U.S. for several years. The example that I cited earlier with the Remicade, and even before that, in the European Union and other countries, biosimilars did enter the marketplace before they came to the U.S. market. However, now that the regulatory aspects of getting these products approved have been completed in the U.S., it's more comfortable as far as timing. But yes, these products have been around for a while, and as I mentioned before, they go through extensive testing, and they do have to demonstrate that there is no clinically meaningful difference. So they work as well, but then another part of that clinically meaningful difference is they can't have adverse effects significantly different than what you're seeing or with the originator product.
Sure. So I'm sure there's many employers and consulting partners that are on this webinar. It's probably a matter of time before they're asked, hey, my PBM is saying I can't get my Humira filled any longer, and they want me to take this new medication, kind of piggybacking off of how long these have been in the market. What would you tell a consumer who's on the branded Humira that's being advised that their benefit is no longer covering the branded drug?
Okay. Well, I would encourage them to talk to their pharmacist, first of all. Being a pharmacist myself, I'm a little biased that way. But your pharmacist would be a great source of information for you with respect to that. But also just encourage them to know that this isn't a decision that they can go into confidently because the products are so well tested. But I would also inquire with them if they have any hesitation and try to find out where that hesitation is. A good pharmacist will do that and help the patient understand what the situation is and help them transition if it's appropriate with their prescriber.
Yeah.
So Becky, I have another question. Are most of these biologics, these compounds that we're talking about, do they treat a wide range of ailments, or is it seems to me I hear autoimmune type diseases being very prevalent, but what's kind of the range of treatment of disease states that are treated, and what is the history of these types of agents? They seem pretty expensive, pretty innovative. I think a little bit of background. I'm kind of curious.
Yep. Yes, definitely. So there is a large number of products in that autoimmune space. We've talked a little bit about that, but also insulins, as I mentioned, many of the insulins. One of the products that come to light where there are definitely in the insulin category where there's some biosimilar competition would be Lantus, would be the originator product. Some of the other therapeutic categories where we see these products would be many of the cancer therapies are biologic products. Some of the cancer support therapies, like I mentioned earlier, the Procrit and Apigen have biosimilars out there. Also, the Nipogen and Neulasta, which are also support agents that impact the level of white blood cells in the body when somebody's taking the cancer treatments. There are some injections into the eye that are used for glaucoma and some eye disorders that have biosimilars. That's, those are just some examples, but it's not totally in the inflammatory conditions area. But from a budget perspective of what's hitting the pharmacy benefit right now, the biggest impact would probably be the the anti-inflammatory, the chemo support area, and in the insulin area.
Excellent, thank you. I have one just popped in through the chat. We'll get to that one in a moment. Thanks for putting it in there. Some messages that the Q&A was not working, so if it doesn't work for you, please put your question in the chat. Here's a question that's been submitted. Where does the FDA approval stand for a high concentration, competitively priced, interchangeable option? Is that one clear to you?
Yes, it is. So I'm assuming that the question is about for Humira. And there is, at this time, there's not an interchangeable product in that high concentration, or excuse me, high concentration space, though there is some in development. And once the FDA does approve that, and we expect movement in that area in 2024 to 2025. And with respect to the pricing aspect, though, that's up to the manufacturer. The FDA does not dictate that. And if you look at the products that are interchangeable, there's two products that are interchangeable to Humira. They're both low concentration products, but both of those manufacturers have opted to go with a high WAC pricing strategy. I couldn't tell you what the other products are going to do with respect to that. So that's, that's kind of where we're at with respect to that. So.
Yep.
Well, thanks, Becky. Great insights. Josh, sorry, go ahead.
Yeah, no, there's a couple of additional great questions. So one that I can answer from Health EZ, the question is, what can we as employers do, and how can Health EZ help to proactively notify employees about these new drug options so they are not caught unaware at the pharmacy? So a couple of things. So we have several preferred pharmacy benefit manager relationships. We've spent some time talking about how CVS is making the biggest changes effective April 1st and no longer covering the branded drug. Another one of our preferred PBMs, EHIM, is actually, when prior authorizations come in, is actually proactively working with the prescribing physician and the member to make them aware of the biosimilar. Just to give you some perspective on cost differences, because I know there's a few questions about that in the Q&A. We're seeing, to Becky's earlier point, a 70 to 80% reduction in the cost. So if you think about the current drug Humira, it's filling for certain doses between $7,000 and $8,000 per month. The biosimilar that CVS is moving forward with and that we're seeing get the most traction is approximately $1,300 a month. So significant savings, between $6,000 and $7,000 per month in savings. If you, depending on the dosing, those numbers could double. So there's really big impact.
That is a big impact. That's right along the lines of our cost containment strategies. So another question, folks, is there an estimate at all as to what value removing Humira from a plan and only covering biosimilars is, for example, percentage on rates, et cetera? Do we have any data that tells us?
Are you directing to me or to Josh?
Either one of you, please.
So there's a couple of impacts that biosimilars can have. Number one is depending on your group size and the stop loss policy or reinsurance policy that you've purchased, the biosimilar being covered versus the branded Humira being covered could be the difference between a laser or not having a laser on a specific policy or individual. The actual impact on rates, I think, is a great question that we can take back internally to our wonderful underwriting team and our Chief Risk Officer, Eric Lamote, to see what type of an impact it's going to have. As this conversation has gone on for the last half an hour, I think it should be pretty clear that this is all very new and it's a rapidly changing environment. And so there's going to be a lot of pricing questions that are going to come up in the coming months.
Becky, did you have any context to add there?
No, just I was thinking more strictly on the the PBM contract per se. But one thing to consider is that if a product is removed, some of the discount or pricing guarantees might be altered. So it just depends on the specific contract and the utilization. So.
And Becky, would you say it's fair that if an employer said, I have Magellan and Magellan just has the biosimilar at parity with Humira, can I exclude that, or would that be a custom formulary change?
That's a great question. And that for most PBMs would be considered a custom formulary change. So some of your pricing aspects may change for that, and they may charge extra for a custom formulary, and that varies by PBM. So.
Sure. Another great question here, and I know we're running up on time, but are you finding any pushback from providers in moving patients to the biosimilars?
In general, biosimilars are pretty well accepted by prescribers, and you see that in some of the older or more tenured biosimilars that are more on the medical benefit. Within the infliximab, which would be the Remicade space, a lot of the utilization has gone over to the and the physicians ordering and administering the biosimilar products. There is a comfort level. There was a little, it didn't happen overnight, but with time it did. And since there are multiple biosimilar products out there, most prescribers are okay with that with respect to transitioning members to a biosimilar. Now, depending on the therapeutic category that they're in, they might be a little bit more resistance. For example, for a cancer medication, if somebody's successfully being treated for a cancer diagnosis, they might be a little bit reluctant to go over because somebody's having success with that. However, in general, I would say the acceptance is pretty high.
Great.
How about two more questions, folks? You think we can squeeze two more in here? And any we don't get to, we will follow up with you. So one question, any insight into the CVS stance? Do you think the other bigs will follow?
I don't have any insights as to, what the other bigs, primarily the other two bigs would be Optum or Express Scripts. They have not announced that they're doing anything. I don't anticipate that they're doing anything with respect to that for 2024, at least the first half of 2024. And they typically wait, and most PBMs do typically wait to make big changes until year end. So I don't have any indicators at this time that they're going down that space, but my impression would be that they would definitely be working on their formulary strategy for 2025. Right now, they're in the heat of it. So,
excellent. Final question. Are we finding any pushback from providers in moving patients to the biosimilars?
Typically, no. Biosimilars so far have been very well accepted from a perspective of how the products work. Some of the pushback that may occur is some of the paperwork that would have to go occur with respect to this. So if a prescriber has to issue a new order or write a new prescription, it is some extra paperwork with respect to that they would have to do. But this is not an uncommon situation within the pharmacy benefit space. It's happened, in the non-biosimilar space when products are removed from formulary or when somebody transitioned from one PBM to another. So it's not something that is unusual and unheard of. So they're accustomed to this type of transition, transitioning someone from one product to another.
Excellent. Thank you. I think we covered all of the questions, but if you think of one after the webinar, or if we did miss one, please send us a note. I just think personally, I'm very grateful to the expertise that we have access to, like Becky and Josh here, to help us and our partners navigate these complicated scenarios to deliver the great Health Easy experience, cost containment, and cost predictability. So in interest of your time, we're going to wrap up for now. There will be a recording available, and if we missed any questions, please reach out to us or your Health Easy representative, and we will get the answer for you. So thank you again for joining us.